She thought he'd cry, beg, or maybe even fall apart. Instead, he sipped his coffee, opened a red folder, and calmly erased her from everything they'd built. House, money, memories, gone without a single scream. But what he did next, it was silent, surgical, and absolutely unforgivable. Let's begin. Franklin Mercer had always been the quiet type. Not the kind of quiet that comes from fear or weakness, but the kind that scares you, because it means he's listening, watching, and filing everything away. Serena used a joke that she could cheat with a megaphone, and he still wouldn't notice. She was half right. He noticed. He just didn't react. That Tuesday morning, he was halfway through his second sip of black coffee when his phone buzzed. A short message lit up the screen. Need space in Cabo with my boss. Don't wait up. No punctuation. No shame. Just a digital shrug disguised as words. Frank didn't flinch. He didn't throw the phone, or scream, or pace the kitchen. He stood, moved to the bedroom, opened the nightstand, and pulled out a thin leather folder marked with Sharpie. If she leaves. It wasn't dramatic. It was protocol. It was years of watching Serena drift from yoga to workshops, from retreats to flirtations, and finally to Gavin, the man with overly white teeth and hands that lingered too long at dinner parties. Inside the folder, a list. Call Marcus, trust attorney. Contact Linda, realtor. Liquidate Vanguard reserves. Update Maya's beneficiary records. Book Lisbon, if needed. Leave nothing she could weaponize later. He checked off 2 items before noon. You see, Frank had already left that marriage, emotionally, spiritually, relationally, 2 years ago. He had stayed for Maya, their daughter, who had long since stopped pretending not to see through the smiles. That evening, Serena posted her first vacation story. A lime dropping into a shot glass. The caption, #Monday meetings, but make it spicy. Frank watched it twice. Not because it hurt, but because it confirmed everything. It was no longer a suspicion. It was a highlight reel. And in the background, that familiar green and gold bracelet he bought her in Prague. The one she once swore she'd never wear while lying. By 8 p.m., Marcus had emailed over the trust update paperwork. Frank didn't even need to read it twice. Every asset had already been shielded years ago, hidden in a shell trust Serena had signed over without reading, during one of those you do the boring stuff, honey phases. By midnight, Serena was tipsy in an infinity pool, pouring champagne in her own mouth while Gavin whispered something about old man robes into her ear. Frank was on a red-eye flight over the Atlantic. Noise-canceling headphones. A neat bourbon. Laptop open. Inbox cleared. The house. Listed under FP Coastal Holdings, LLC. The mutual funds? Transferred. Brokerage? Split cleanly into 2. His and hers. Except hers held $217. The symbolic amount that would leave her car declined mid-purchase at a 5-star seafood joint. And the message she would receive days later, when she finally tried to reclaim what she thought was hers. It wouldn't be shouted. It wouldn't be emotional. It would be a simple note tucked inside a Pilates bag. You asked for space. I gave you square footage. But that was just the beginning. The sun was blinding in Cabo, but Serena didn't notice. Her feed was blowing up. Likes, comments, DM reactions. She posted another story, her legs wrapped around Gavin's waist in a pool. Captioned, #stress detox, #boss energy, #clarity found. What she didn't know was that, 600 miles away, a moving crew with no branded vans was packing up her curated life into neat, itemized piles on the front lawn. Frank's instructions were simple. If it has her initials, put it outside. If it's marked red, it stays. The closet's mine. The movers didn't ask questions. Neither did Glenn, their neighbor across the street, who stared from his front porch, slowly realizing this wasn't a renovation. It was a purge. By 10 a.m., the velvet chaise, monogrammed luggage, framed faux European art, and her entire high-end Pilates gear were stacked on the grass like discarded showroom decor. One bag still had a post that stuck to it. Private. Do not touch. Frank hadn't. He wasn't interested in her secrets. He was busy reauthoring her access to everything. Banking, brokerage, legal authority. One click at a time. By noon, her favorite credit card, the black one with a metal finish, was declined at a resort checkout. Twice. The concierge's smile turned forced. I'm sorry, Miss Dalton, do you have another method of payment? Serena blinked behind her oversized white-rimmed sunglasses. She handed him a gold card. Declined again. Her chest tightened. She called the bank. I'm sorry, Ms. Dalton. All accounts under the Mercer Marital Trust were closed last Thursday. Legal authorization by the primary holder. I was on those accounts. You were a secondary party. And just like that, Serena realized she was rich on Instagram and broke in real life. She called Gavin. Can you cover the bill? I'll Venmo you later. How much? $3,000, including minibar and a private massage. Silence. Then, yes, sure. But the pause before that sure split the world in half. She tried Frank next. Straight to voicemail. If it's about Cabo, it's not. No screams. No curse words. Just the clean tone of someone no longer reachable. The flight home was the longest of her life. The plane was delayed. Her carry-on wobbled on a broken wheel. Her Uber driver said nothing. By the time she turned onto their street, the porch lights were glowing, but not for her. Her things were still there, wet from rain. One of her handbags lay, face down in a puddle. The painting from Prague, the one she called My Soul in a Frame, was leaning against a mailbox like a tombstone. She ran up the steps and punched in the door code. Red light. Beep. Again. Red. She pounded harder. Frank. No answer. Then a voice behind the door. Calm. Feminine. Controlled. Can I help you? Serena turned. A woman, maybe 35, yoga pants and a towel on her head, barefoot, holding a glass of tea. I live here, Serena blurted. No, you lived here, the woman said. I signed a lease last Friday. Through FP Coastal Holdings. Serena froze. The woman held out an envelope with her name on it. Inside, the property transfer, proof of sale, digital access logs, and a one-line note in Frank's handwriting. You want it out. So I held the door open. Serena didn't cry. Not yet. She stood there, soaked, gripping a useless envelope, while her former life reflected her back through the windows, unbothered, untouched, no longer hers. Across the street, Glenn flicked on his porch light. Smile for TikTok, he said, holding up his phone. The internet loves karma. She screamed, You don't know anything. He lowered the phone slightly. I know who built this house, who loved you, who fixed the damn water heater while you were in Sedona, aligning your energy. Serena turned away, but she couldn't hide from what came next, because Frank didn't just leave her. He'd erased her from his story. Serena hadn't felt powerless since college. Not even during her early days teaching mindfulness workshops in church basements, or when she and Frank were living off his architectural freelance gigs. Back then, they had shared meals and dreams, mostly unpaid ones, but at least there was respect. Or so she thought. Now, she was standing in front of a house that no longer recognized her. Dripping from rain. Designer wedges muddy. Mascara melting into streaks. She had become the type of story she once mocked. The woman who thought she'd always be safe because she was pretty, persuasive, and patient just long enough to win. Except Frank didn't explode. He exited, and it was Maya who made it real. 7 missed calls. 2 ignored texts. A desperation message through WhatsApp. Finally answered. Maya, hi Mom. Cold. Careful. Maya, where is your father? Pause. In Lisbon. Lisbon. Serena repeated, stunned. Since when? What? Maya didn't shout. She didn't sound angry. She sounded resolved. Since last week. He's staying with Eduardo, his old friend from the firm. You remember Eduardo, right? The one you call the guy who smells like old carpet, because he always wore that vintage cologne you hated. Serena swallowed hard. You knew. I knew, Maya said, voice shaking with something between grief and shame. I knew the second you posted that pool video. You were laughing while another man poured champagne into your mouth. You tagged it Clarity, but you forgot I follow you. That wasn't. Maya, listen to me. It's not what you think. No, Mom, Maya interrupted, softly but firmly. It's exactly what I thought. You left that a long time ago. You just finally sent the memo. He didn't react because you didn't matter enough anymore to deserve a scene. Serena blinked. The phone felt heavier in her hand. Where are you staying? Maya asked. A hotel. Well, not exactly. An Airbnb. Short term. Gavin's. No, Serena answered, voice cracking. He hasn't called. More silence. Then Maya spoke with the kind of finality that made Serena's knees weaken. You always said Dad was boring, that he didn't dream big, that he didn't match your energy. But Mom, he matched your loyalty, until you made a joke out of it. Serena wanted to cry, but Maya wouldn't let her. You broke the family, not with one mistake, but with hundreds of tiny choices you thought wouldn't matter. Maya, please. He gave you everything, Mom. And you gave his trust away for a few filtered sunsets and a man who can't even split a hotel bill. Then came the click. Maya was gone. And for the first time in her adult life, Serena didn't just lose control. She felt it. Physically. Like vertigo. The world tilting beneath her. She slumped against her soaked luggage, knees hitting pavement, lips trembling, breathing hard. This wasn't just divorce. This was obliteration. No Frank. No Maya. No Gavin. No house. No savings. Just headlines in a neighborhood group chat. Just a trending TikTok titled Cabo wife evicted by karma. And the worst part, Frank hadn't even raised his voice. He'd simply moved on. The Airbnb Serena found through a third-party app wasn't luxury. It wasn't even average. It was the kind of place that still had popcorn ceiling tiles and smelled like someone had once tried to fry onions and cover it up with drugstore candles. The water ran cold. The lights flickered when a microwave ran. The sofa caved slightly in the middle, like it had endured too many failed relationships. Serena sat there, cross-legged on a peeling vinyl couch, gripping the certified letter she had just signed for. The envelope was thick, heavy, as if it held her life inside, which in a way, it did. The return address read, FP Coastal Holdings, LLC. She didn't even need to open it to know. Still, she did. With trembling fingers, she unfolded the papers. Her name wasn't on the deed, hadn't been for years. During the refinance, Frank had moved the title into a trust for tax purposes, and she had nodded, bored, distracted by an influencer's livestream about cleansing your surroundings. She never read the documents. She never imagined he would weaponize the boring. But he had, with surgical precision. The joint accounts? Closed. The brokerage? Dissolved. Her access? Revoked. She flipped to the final page. There, in Frank's distinct, architect-like handwriting, sharp, clean, deliberate, was a single paragraph. You once told me you wanted freedom, not fences. So I gave you the gate code and walked away. The house was never yours. The money was always shared, until you made your love conditional. The only beneficiary of my estate is Maya. She has my name, my trust, and my forgiveness. You had my loyalty until the moment you laughed poolside. This isn't revenge. It's math. Because some things can't be fixed. Only left. F. Serena didn't cry. She folded the letter back up, slowly, precisely, as if handling evidence. Then she just sat. No TV on. No wine. No soft jazz playing in the background like she used to insist on during her Zen time. Just the hum of a cheap refrigerator, a cracked window that whistled with every breeze, and the slow, gnawing realization that she had finally run out of alibis. 3 days earlier, she was a woman lounging in a pool with a man she thought would upgrade her life. Now, she was the punchline to her own cautionary tale. And it kept getting worse. Because Gavin, the man who once whispered, "You deserve better than that," stiff in her ear, hadn't returned a single call since the resort checkout incident. The moment the credit card declined, so did his interest. He had ghosted. Fully. The texts were left on read. The last thing he sent her. Hope you get things sorted. It's been fun. Not even a take care. Gavin, the man she believed in. The one she imagined moving into her new life with. Turned out, he was never in it for the life, just the escape. And now that the illusion had shattered, so had the fantasy. So she tried again. She tried to call Maya. 6 times. Voicemail. She even wrote a long, emotionally manipulative message. Phrases like, "I miss our talks," and "I didn't mean for this to happen," and "Can we just meet for coffee?" She stared at it. Her thumb hovered over the send button. Then she deleted it, because she knew Maya wasn't going to answer. Not this time. Frank hadn't needed to destroy Serena. He didn't need to scream, threaten, or expose her on social media. No lawsuits. No ugly divorce court fights. No dragged-out custody wars. He just walked away. With grace. With silence. With methodical preparation. And he took the entire house of cards with him. Even Glenn, the nosy neighbor, had stopped filming. His viral TikTok clip had done its rounds. Cabo wife evicted by karma now had over 90,000 views. The comments were merciless. Imagine cheating and ending up homeless. King behavior. That man didn't even raise his voice. She got served a 7-course dish of consequences. But the worst comment, the one Serena kept replaying in her mind, was from someone named it Frank Built It. This is what happens when you confuse silence with weakness. That night, alone in the flickering kitchen, Serena poured herself a glass of cheap boxed wine, the kind she used to sneer at in grocery aisles. She sipped it slowly, bitterly, and then, as if on instinct, she opened her phone and scrolled through her old Instagram posts. Tequila shots, bikini poses, Gavin's arm, new views, new truths. She hit delete, post by post, not because she was sorry, but because each one now looked like a monument to arrogance, a trail of her own downfall. One by one, she removed them until her profile was nearly empty, except for one photo she forgot to delete, a blurry shot from 2013, Frank holding Maya on his shoulders at a county fair. No filters, just joy. She stared at it, long enough to feel something that hadn't visited her in years. Not regret, grief, real, tangible grief for the life she thought she'd outgrown, the man she thought she outsmarted, the daughter she thought would never turn her back. But grief doesn't rewind time. It just sharpens what's already lost. And in that tiny Airbnb kitchen, with flickering light and the smell of someone else's regrets, Serena finally understood. She had asked for clarity, and Frank gave her the clearest consequence of all. It had been exactly 17 days since Serena's downfall began. 17 days since that text message. 17 days since she told Frank she needed space in Cabo with her boss, like she was discussing laundry. And now, all that remained of her carefully curated life was an old suitcase with a broken zipper and an inbox full of silent receipts. Frank never replied to any of her voicemails. Not the pleading one, not the angry one, not even the final, shaking, whispered please. He didn't have to, because Serena had been erased. Not with violence, not with scandal, with blueprints. That's what Frank was, an architect. And this, all of it, was his greatest design, a quiet, methodical exit. She hadn't just lost a man. She lost to a man who planned for this while still bringing her morning coffee. And somewhere, in a quiet apartment in Lisbon, he was probably sketching on the back of a receipt, sipping espresso, and forgetting the sound of her voice. Frank hadn't posted a single thing. No photos, no quotes, no vengeance. The only proof he existed now came from Maya, who texted her mother a few days ago with a single line. Dad's smiling again. A real one. It nearly broke Serena, because that meant she was the reason he stopped smiling in the first place. But Frank was healing. He'd rented a studio overlooking the Tagus River. Eduardo had offered guest house, but Frank declined. He needed something smaller, emptier. He wanted to hear his own thoughts again. He started drawing. Not buildings, not homes, spaces, retreats for people like him. Men and women who needed refuge from betrayal, silence from the chaos. Healing with 4 walls and no ghosts. Maya visited him a week after the closing. She brought her sketchbook and a bottle of Portuguese wine she bought with her student stipend. They walked along the coast, shared olives and stories, and Frank laughed, really laughed, for the first time in 5 years. Not because he was free, because he chose it. Meanwhile, Serena tried to pick up what was left of her dignity. She attempted to reach out to old friends, those she hadn't ghosted during her self-reinvention stage. Most were too busy to reply. A few offered polite excuses. One brutally honest text read, "You only called when you were winning. Now that you're not, we remember." She filed for a modest apartment downtown. 2 bedrooms, mold in the ceiling. The leasing office asked for proof of income. She had none. Not her name. Frank had closed every account that bore hers like a footnote. Gavin, he'd disappeared fully. No texts. No replies. Not even a good luck. He was the type who fed on glitter and left the moment it rained. But Serena still had that one thing she never understood how to value. Time. Time to think. Time to reflect. Time to feel the very absence she thought she craved when she told her husband she needed space. In a moment of reluctant humility, she opened her journal, One of those expensive leather-bound ones she used to leave on coffee tables, filled with half-finished affirmations and faux inspirational quotes. For the first time, she wrote something that wasn't meant for anyone else. Frank didn't punish me. He didn't hurt me. He removed me. And that was worse than pain, because it meant I was no longer worth responding to. She closed the journal, stared out the small, dirty window. No ocean view. No infinity pool. Just the hum of a passing city that no longer knew her name. But across the Atlantic, in Lisbon, Frank opened a letter addressed to him. No return name. Just a line of text inside. If clarity is space, I hope you finally have enough to breathe. I never deserved your calm. He didn't smile. He didn't cry. He just folded it, placed it in a drawer with the others, and walked to the window where Maya stood, camera in hand, capturing the golden wash of the sun on the rooftops. You coming? She asked. Frank nodded. Just needed a second. He looked around his new place. No framed photos. No symbolic rugs. No things tied to memory. Just light, air, and the sound of peace. It wasn't a happy ending. It wasn't tragic either. It was what Serena never expected from him. Final. Silent. Complete.